I never believed in ghosts. To me, horror stories were just entertainment, something to enjoy late at night with friends, nothing more. But everything changed when I stayed at Hotel Mavis. It was an old hotel, built in the 1800s, standing eerily on the outskirts of town. The moment I stepped inside, I felt something was off. The air was damp, carrying a faint scent of old wood and something else, something metallic, like rust or dried blood. The receptionist was an old man with deep wrinkles and tired eyes. His name tag read Harrison. He barely looked at me as he handed over the key. "Room 306, he muttered. "Enjoy your stay." His tone was flat, almost lifeless. I ignored the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine and took the key. The elevator was ancient. It groaned and shook as it carried me up to the third floor. When the doors creaked open, I stepped into a dimly lit hallway. The carpets were faded, the wallpaper peeling in places. And then, I noticed something. At the very end of the hallway, a woman stood motionless, facing one of the doors. She wore a long, white gown, her dark hair falling over her shoulders. I blinked. She was gone. Shaking off the uneasiness, I unlocked my room and stepped inside. It was an ordinary hotel room, queen-sized bed, a wooden desk, a small TV. The only thing that stood out was the smell. The same damp, metallic scent from the lobby lingered here, stronger this time. I sighed and tossed my bag onto the bed. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But then, I noticed something. The closet door was slightly open. Just a crack. I could have sworn it was shut when I walked in. Slowly, I stepped closer and reached for the handle. I hesitated for a moment before yanking it open. Nothing. Just an empty closet. I exhaled sharply and shook my head. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in that room. Later that night, as I was lying in bed, something woke me up. A faint sound, like the rustling of fabric. I sat up and listened. The room was silent, but the air felt heavier than before. Then, I heard it again. From the hallway. Slowly, I got out of bed and walked to the door. I hesitated before looking through the peephole. And there she was. The woman in white. She stood directly in front of my door, her back turned to me. Her long black hair was unkempt, reaching down to her waist. She wasn't moving. Just standing there. A cold chill ran down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to step away, to lock the door, to do anything but stand there watching. But then, she turned her head. Not her body. Just her head. Slowly, unnaturally, until her face was almost completely facing backward. Her eyes were pure black. Her lips curled into a grin, stretching too far, almost inhumanly wide. And then, she vanished. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. My hands were shaking as I locked the door. For a few moments, there was silence. Then, a knock. 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 Soft at first. Then louder. I covered my mouth, forcing myself to stay silent. Then, a whisper. "Let me in." The voice was cold, almost playful, but dripping with something sinister. I backed away from the door, shaking my head. No. This wasn't real. This had to be a dream. The knocking stopped. The room was dead silent again. I waited, frozen in place, for what felt like an eternity. When nothing else happened, I finally crawled back into bed, pulling the covers over my head like a terrified child. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I went straight down to the lobby. I needed answers. Harrison, the old receptionist, was still there. He barely acknowledged me as I approached the desk. "Excuse me," I started, keeping my voice steady. "Who else is staying on the third floor?" He frowned slightly. "Just you." My stomach dropped. "But I saw someone," I insisted. A woman. In a white dress. She was standing right outside my door. Harrison's face paled slightly. His eyes darted to the side, as if checking if anyone else was listening. "You should leave," he murmured. I blinked. "What?" "Check out today," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't stay another night." His expression was deadly serious. And for the first time since I arrived at Hotel Mavis, I truly felt afraid. I stood frozen. The door to my hotel room, which I had shut and locked just moments ago, creaked open slowly. Creak. A chill crawled down my spine as I stared at the now slightly open doorway. The hallway beyond was dimly lit, casting long, eerie shadows. The air felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was just a draft? No. That was impossible. The windows were shut, the air conditioning was off, and there was no way a slight breeze could turn the handle and push open a locked door. Something was wrong. Then, I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, a man stood completely still. His clothes were old-fashioned and outdated brown suit that looked slightly too big for him. His face was half hidden in the shadows, but his eyes were locked onto mine. A wave of unease gripped me, but before I could react, the man slowly raised a single finger to his lips. SHHH. Then, he was gone. Vanished. Like smoke dissipating into thin air. I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking, my breath uneven. This was real. Something was in this hotel. And it was watching me. I didn't sleep that night. Every little sound, every creak of the floor, every distant whisper of wind made me jump. I kept my eyes locked on the door, afraid that at any moment, it might open again. By the time morning came, my head was pounding from exhaustion. But I needed answers. I took the elevator down to the lobby, determined to talk to the old receptionist again. But before I could reach the front desk, I spotted someone sitting in the lounge area near the fireplace. It was the man from the hallway. The one who had shushed me. Up close, he looked older than I expected. Deep wrinkles lined his face, his skin pale like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in years. He wore the same brown suit, buttoned up neatly despite its worn appearance. He saw me approaching and gave a small nod, gesturing for me to sit across from him. "You're new here," he said, his voice deep and rough. I hesitated before sitting down. "Yeah. I checked in last night." The old man sighed, leaning back in his chair. "My name is Edgar. I've been staying here for a long time." I frowned. "How long?" Edgar didn't answer immediately. He just stared into the fireplace, his expression unreadable. "Long enough," he finally said. "Long enough to know that if you value your life, you should leave before it's too late." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice lower now. Edgar exhaled, rubbing his temples. "This place. It's not just a hotel. It never was. It was built over 200 years ago as the home of a woman named Hotel Mavis." I listened intently as he continued. "Eleanor was a noblewoman, married to a wealthy merchant. They were well respected, until one night, she was found dead in her bedroom." A chill ran through me. "Dead?" I repeated. "Not just dead," Edgar said grimly. "Her head was missing. It was never found." I swallowed hard. The staff tried to cover it up, but strange things started happening. Servants disappeared. Visitors went missing. Eventually, the house was abandoned, until it was turned into a hotel. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. "And you're telling me Eleanor's ghost is still here?" Edgar looked at me, his expression dark. "Not just her." That night, I returned to my room, Edgar's words still echoing in my mind. "You should leave before it's too late." I tried. I really did. But when I went outside to look for another hotel, something strange happened. No matter which way I walked, no matter which street I turned onto, I always ended up back in front of Hotel Mavis. As if the town itself wouldn't let me leave. Defeated, I returned to my room, locking the door and placing a chair under the handle for extra security. I wouldn't let anything in. Or so I thought. Somewhere past midnight, I woke up to a familiar sound. Knock. 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 I squeezed my eyes shut. No. Not again. The knocking was soft at first, but then it grew louder. Knock. 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 I clutched the sheets tightly, remembering Edgar's warning. Whatever happens, don't open the door. Then, I saw something move beneath the door. A shadow. A human-shaped shadow standing just outside my room. At first, it stayed still. But then, the shadow's neck began to stretch. Lower. And lower. Until I could see its twisted head peeking from under the door. Then, in a slow, drawn-out whisper, it spoke. I know you're in there.